Welcome, Erin. I'm so glad to have you back again this week.
Thank you. Last week was fun, so I'm glad I get to do this again. Um, Great questions too, and we ran out of time. There was a lot of questions and a lot of um, just really good backstory too, and understanding just how there's pain kind of on all sides of addiction. Um, yeah, so glad to be back. I am the clinical director at Seeking Integrity Los Angeles inpatient program. We're a 14, 21, or 28-day intensive inpatient for sex addiction. I work directly with all of our clients, but also with partners. And so I'm in recovery myself from substances. And previous to working at Seeking Integrity, I was a clinical director for an inpatient substance use and mental health dual diagnosis um, for about 7 years. So I love this work. Um, I continue to grow and learn every day because there's new challenges thrown at us every day. And I look forward to interacting with you today.
I'm grateful for Erin and her recovery too. She shared, so she put that in there. But we both really like that is so key to who we are is our recovery. And we both lean into that and have found that recovery has given us the ability to navigate life and all its messiness, with integrity. I love that our program is called Seeking Integrity. We personally, each of us strive for that and want to help others to find that as well. I know people don't call, when I answer the phone, they're going, I'm looking for integrity. But trust me, if you stay in this, you'll find that is key. But integrity is how we stop the hurt too. If we're living in integrity, we're not causing pain to ourselves and others. So it's a shift. But I understand at the beginning, it's like I just want to not hurt. So we're here for you. So the first question, Erin, is my husband is a well-respected clinician in the mental health field, specializing in addiction. Can you see this one?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. I wonder because you logged in. So I'm gonna hit answered. So go to the answered section and
Okay.
then you'll be able to see it. Okay. Now I'm gonna start over.
I could take some notes, but
Yeah, no,
um,
no. My
okay.
husband is a well-respected clinician in the mental health field, specializing in addiction. Discovery was 21 months ago, and he explained away his infidelity with sex workers, both live and virtual, because of past abuse. I insisted that he be evaluated by a CSAT, and the results on the questionnaire were inconclusive, which my husband interpreted it as negative. He will not take any of the CSAT's advice, inpatient therapy, outpatient therapy, 12-step group, and full neuropsych based on the inconclusive evaluation and has discredited the CSAT. My question is, how do you evaluate someone who knows how to outsmart the evaluators? And where does that leave me? I love him dearly, but do not feel safe staying if he won't start therapy. P.S. He still subscribed to webcam porn sites. Oh, my heart.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So a couple things. Um, when we're still in denial in our addiction, yeah, you're going to look for any back door, right? Oh, the CSAT evaluation said this, or oh, I'm a mental health professional, so I know better. I would say 90% of the clients that come in, I'd say 75% got caught, and they, in hitting that bottom, realized they need help, or maybe it was a you need to go, or we're done. But they oftentimes the spouse is like, be careful. They will outsmart. They've lied to their therapist. They've lied to everybody. They will find a way out. And we're like, look, we specialize in this for a reason. There is so much denial coming in the door. Um, so I think there's a couple things here. Yes, sometimes people act out and they're not sex addicts, right? Um, Other times they act out and they are sex addicts. I think that he's leaning on the, well, I was evaluated for sex addiction and I don't meet criteria. That doesn't change the fact that he is cheating on you. So to me, that is the boundary in itself. A CSAT is going to be able to adequately support someone in his shoes, whether or not he wants to claim addiction or not. Um, Both him and you, right? To walk through the process of disclosure, to walk through the process of healing and what this looks like. They're uniquely geared to help with infidelity, right? Whether or not someone is saying I'm an addict or not. Now, without that, you're right. They're going to struggle to say, if I'm not an addiction, I don't need help. And I imagine he's using some of his, you know, credentials, let's say, to say he knows better. But the bottom line is, as his wife, you have someone that is cheating on you. I think that alone gives you grounds to set some pretty serious boundaries. He's still subscribed to webcam porn sites. No, just no. That is, to me, is a big F you in your face, which is, not only am I saying I'm not a sex addict, that's gaslighting you. Now I'm moving on to say that I don't need therapy or inpatient because this one CSAT deemed that I don't need it. And I'm also going to still subscribe to something that is considered infidelity in your eyes, right? This isn't something that you've agreed to and support. So, and you even said he's acted out both virtually and in person. So I guess really you might just need the permission to say that, with or without an assessment, with or without a claim of addiction or not, you deserve the right to feel safe. And boundaries are about making you feel safe. And you don't feel safe. So I would say, here's your permission. We're giving that to you, because this is a load of crap. And, you know, like I said, I'm in recovery, and I've worked in addiction for a number of years. Sex addiction is different in some ways. It just is. So he may have all of the knowledge in the world around substance use, but this is not that. This is something very different. And the betrayal looks a lot different as well. So yeah. P.S. boundaries. That whole thing makes me angry. And the reason is, we see it coming in the door almost always on that front end of treatment. And it's because they're still really well defended. They have up all of this denial and defenses, and they're not ready to look at it. And until those walls come down and they truly are experiencing their feelings, they can't have empathy for you. So I'm really sorry that you're going through that. I truly am.
So I added to the chat, we have a betrayed partner work group starting on Wednesday, and it talks specifically about healthy boundaries. And healthy boundaries are not punishment, you know, for him, against him. It is for your safety. As Erin mentioned, it's for your safety. What do you need? And so, you know, he's a mental health professional. He knows all the jargon. You know, you won't win the argument of that, but yeah, he's cheating on you. And, you know, my thought was, wow, if you're not an addict, then you can stop, you know, so why is this going on at all? But for you, a healthy boundary, and I would work with your qualified professional. If you don't have one, email me, tami@seekingintegrity.com, and tell me where you're located so I can help you find somebody. But and we work from a codependent lens, meaning we don't go, you're part of the problem, you're codependent, you're enmeshed, you're an enabler. We go, gosh, you love somebody who has some massive brokenness, and we want to help you find healing and support. But the healthy boundary might be, you know, if you are unwilling to get help, then for my safety, you know, you need to sleep in another room, you need to move out. It may be physical separation. It may be, you know, I want to be close to you. I visualize having, you know, a future with you. But this is going to make me really have to hold my physical safety. The other thing is, and Erin and I have seen this way too many times, you know, the virtual stuff that people think it's benign. Do you know how much blackmail is going on? I mean, like, people have been blackmailed, and, you know, like tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars spent on blackmail. So in his profession, you know, well, and for some, I mean, depending on what the acting out is, you know, can also be an ethical issue with their licensing. So there's some real risk for his lofty profession as well. And for some people, that can be that can be the thing that tips the scale, where they go, I don't want, if everybody knew that I was doing this, would I be okay with it? Because guess what? You found out, other people do too. So,
And not to mention, right there is a ton of sting operations going on right now. We just had a client who came in. He got arrested for a solicitation. And he wasn't acting out every day or all the time, but on one of the occasions he went on seeking arrangement to meet up with a sex worker, and it was an undercover, and it was a sting set up. He got arrested, lost his job. It's a nightmare. So it's illegal for one, and it's unsafe. And without all of that chaos, I mean, especially if he's a licensed clinician, you only lose your license once, and there goes your career with it. But for you, you know, protect yourself. Yeah. Because this is not.
please join that betrayed partner work group. Like, it's on our website under the work group tab. And I know there's a few spots left. I just looked a little while ago, but Angela Spearman does a great job of hosting or facilitating that. And she talks about healthy boundaries, and that can be really helpful, and connecting with other people. It's done via Zoom, low cost, live facilitated. I think you'd find that really useful. So, okay, Erin, the next one. My SA husband and I are working on disclosure. We are both working on recovery as well. I see change in him and feel he's going to be honest. However, I'm struggling with him saying, if the evidence is there, or if you think I did it, then I did it. Even if I don't remember, I'm going to say I did it. He talks about not remembering everything, which I get. Some stuff he wouldn't remember, but if you did it enough, you would know you did it. For example, he's been to massage parlors several times in the past and always says he goes for a massage, nothing sexual. And he admitted to hanging out with prostitutes in motels, only to have company to do drugs, but not to have sex. I'm sorry, like, I almost laughed at that one. Oh yeah, I'm just doing drugs. Now maybe he never had actual intercourse, but it's hard to think that they just looked at each other. Hi. I feel like now he's saying, if you think I did it, or it seems like I did it, then I'll say I did it. I feel like this is a cop out. What's your thoughts as to why he's saying it like this? That's complicated.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, if he's working on disclosure, then that means he's working on disclosure with a CSAT that's supposed to be
Mhm.
really helping him closely with his disclosure statement, going through the years, going through the different acting out experiences. That to me is a cop out, because if you're saying, well, if you think I did it, then I probably did, then you're not actually you're not actually stating with honesty that is true. And you're kind of becoming a victim, really, of whether you think something happened or not, which in some ways is gaslighting. Well, if you think it happened, then I guess it did. So I don't know. I would say that a really good disclosure statement, I would recommend that your CSAT sees the disclosure statement prior to disclosure, even just the day before. They're not holding secrets from you. You're going to have a full disclosure, but they're just looking at whether or not this thing doesn't sound right, because they don't want to put you through a disclosure that is based on your judgment. It should come from the integrity and honesty of your partner. So it is true. We do have a lot of guys that don't remember everything. And what I always tell them is, if you're doing a thorough prep work for disclosure, then it should be honest to the best of your ability. In other words, your partner has the opportunity to ask questions, of course. But if there is something that you didn't remember and you did a thorough job at prep work, that's still within your integrity. And so, but this to me sounds, the response is not, and the things he's saying is rather fishy. Like, okay, massage without something sexual could be probable, could happen, not necessarily for somebody who is acting out in massage parlors. But to hang out with prostitutes in hotels just to do drugs, I don't know about that one. I'm sorry, but that just kind of triggers my bullshit meter. So, and not to mention, hanging out with prostitutes in motels doing drugs is unacceptable on its own, add intercourse or not. but it just doesn't sound highly probable. So I would have your CSAT check in with his CSAT. I would say, hey, this is what he's saying to me. I feel really uncomfortable being the barometer of his honesty. I don't feel comfortable with him basically just saying, if I think it, then it happened, because I want to trust his statement. I see that he's doing work. I want to believe, but that's not helpful. You know, when I'm triggered, he doesn't have to be defensive. Like, no, that didn't happen, because you've been there before and he's lied. However, he shouldn't admit things he didn't do, and he shouldn't put that on you. So I would say your CSAT should be able to help you with this. And again, have your CSAT look at the disclosure statement ahead of time, just to kind of feel it out for accuracy, for just that it's well done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this feels like he's looking for you to write his disclosure for him rather than him taking any ownership. Yeah, and my BS meter was going off like crazy too. I was like, yeah, don't buy that at all. Oh yeah. Now he might have that might be the lie he was telling himself. Yeah, I'm just going to hang out with the prostitutes at the motel to do drugs. Again, there it's still a completely, that's a really poor life choice, so all of that, but this feels so minimizing and dismissive is, it's like, well, okay, whatever, without really taking ownership. So I would be very cautious about even doing the disclosure. I love what Erin was saying about have your CSAT check in with his CSAT and make sure he's really getting in this, but let your CSAT know this is what I'm feeling, because that feels like it's going to be unsafe for you is my concern. Okay, next one, Erin. My partner and I are both 60 years old and have long-term sobriety in AA. He has been looking at porn and masturbating since he was 14, so for 45 years. I know about masturbating to porn before moving in together 4 years ago, but Discovery Day 2 years ago, I learned it was a much bigger deal. A few months before D-Day, he told me he didn't watch porn anymore, so I was shocked when I discovered he did, and was more shocked when he said he never told me he had stopped. Despite several conversations over the last 2 years, he does not believe he has a problem. He has, however, modified his sexual behavior. He has watched porn only 6 times this year. The last was a month ago. Since then, his viewing is limited to not porn, but YouTube videos of female athletes and other scantily dressed young women. He does not know that I see his YouTube history, so I know when he lies to me. He continues to be dishonest with me about what he watches. He maintains that he does not have a problem, but that I have a problem.
Yeah. You're being gaslit all over the place, first of all. I think, and this theme has kind of rolled through some of these questions. You have to decide what you're okay with. You have to decide, is this a problem for me? Not, am I the problem? Because he's decided that. Are you okay with this? Are you okay with this behavior? Are you okay that he's watching porn? Are you okay that now it's non-porn? You have to decide that. And ultimately, he doesn't have to believe it's a problem for you to decide it's a problem for you. I think that as I kind of look at this, sex addiction's a little bit different, right? We have a lot of guys that come in that were able to get sober from alcohol or from drugs and really struggle with the sex addiction piece, mainly because it's subjective. That inner circle could look very different from one guy to another guy. Some in consultation with their sponsor or therapist may have masturbation in there in some healthy form, right? Others absolutely not. We don't recommend porn for anybody, just because it's like the antithesis of intimacy. But yeah, for him, it's interesting because he says he doesn't have a problem, but he was willing to stop and he was lying to you. So in some way, he finds it a problem enough to hide. And if my partner has a problem with it, I'm just going to lie about it versus, stop. That speaks volumes about addiction for me personally. And And non-porn is porn. We have guys that come in, their relapses for the last 2 years have been around non-porn. Yeah, searching for certain actresses in bikinis, or just because it's not pornography does not mean that I'm not using visual stimuli of, other women or other arousing material that I then masturbate to, and I still can't stop doing that. So it's just kind of another way of saying it's not as big of a deal. It's still a big deal. You're not the problem. The dishonesty alone is an indicator right there that it's not okay. Um, and you get to decide, is this a problem for me? If this is a problem for you, set boundaries. You don't have to wait for him to say it's an issue for him for you to say I'm not okay with it.
Well, and you said you're both long-term sobriety and AA, so you know the drill. I mean, you know how, like, so I was thinking, he's in AA. Perhaps a searching and fearless moral inventory, because you know what, sex comes up a lot in the AA big book about, so like it maybe, lean back into to AA and really take a look at this. We cannot be happy, joyous, and free in 12 step if we are using some other problematic behavior. And at the end of the day, so I share this one often, that there's lots of podcasts on sex, love, and addiction, podcasts with Dr. Rob. One of them is with Dr. Stan Tatkin, and he talks about in a healthy relationship, that's the name of that one, is we against the world. And it talks about what's a healthy relation and what isn't a healthy relationship. And when somebody's keeping those lies, those lies and secrets, he's lying to himself. That he's lying to himself and to you and everyone else, with the minimization. And I was thinking too, when Erin was sharing about the healthy boundaries for you, but I'm thinking, how much of your time are you feeling like you have to focus on watching what he's doing online? I'm like, gosh, like that's sucking your life away too. So to me, it would be, what do you need to do for your recovery, so that you get to enjoy the fruits of your hard work in recovery, so that it isn't an addict who's in active addiction, because that's really what he's technically sober from alcohol, and that's abstinence if you're still using all these other things. So I'm sorry, but gosh, please, I had put that betrayed partner work group, healthy boundaries. It would be super helpful for you, as well. So okay. So the next one, there's two of them. My husband and I are going through a therapeutic separation. Any suggestion on what to say to the kids? The kids are 7 and 13.
Yeah, so developmentally, it's going to look different for those two ages. It depends. I don't know if it's an in-home, out-of-home separation. One thing I can say is do not talk about sex addiction. We cannot unsee our parents' sex life. We cannot unsee infidelity. We cannot unsee porn and I would say that is not the direction that I would suggest for either one of those ages. I think that there's a number of different ways that you can go about it. I think the big focus is on we love you. We love you. And the fact that you're separated, not necessarily divorcing, it doesn't have to be these final answers about this is going to be like this forever, but it's, mom and dad are choosing to really work on being better as parents and better as your mom and dad, and the way that we work together as a team. And there's going to be, some changes, and it's going to be difficult at times, but know that it is our number one priority is to love you and be there for you. And I think as much as you can co-parent through a separation, showing kindness and respect toward each other in front of your kids, it takes a lot of that anxiety off. Your 13-year-old is probably going to have more questions. And for a 13-year-old, they may understand mental health. They may understand, working on getting well or working on getting better. But I would definitely avoid the answers that would involve any of the details around sex addiction. It's too much. And developmentally for both of those, it's a big no. But yeah, I think it's being honest, being consistent. If you're saying like, we're going to be living at these two places. This is what our schedule is going to look like. We're going to spend this time all together. We're going to spend this time at dad's, this time with mom. Give them notice about what is to come. So it's not this unknown every day. I don't know which direction I'm going. Be consistent in your parenting, whether you're together or separate. And yeah, I think focusing on we're doing this to get better. And we love you guys no matter what. We are a team when it comes to you guys.
Great answer. And I do, yeah, it's so hard with the kids, but just providing stability for them. This is not their fault and nothing they did or didn't do, but it's also, it emotionally impacts them too. So, okay. I just had my full disclosure with my husband, revealed a lot of new information about other women, which was bad, but not necessarily surprising to me because it was the same category of behaviors I already knew about. The one thing I did not expect at all was that he told me he is attracted to my mom and has been struggling with that for a long time.
Oh, fun. Yeah, that is a challenge.
Oh, wait, there's more. Oh, so sorry. I sound like a sales. So scroll down some more. I found this so disgusting and I'm still in shock. I always just assumed he would never be attracted to my mom like that. So I was just reassessing our entire marriage and rethinking everything at this point. I am struggling to feel like I can ever live with him knowing this is going on while she is still being close to my mom and having healthy family relationships. Is this normal for a sex addict?
Um, there, nothing is normal. In other words, like cookie cutter. I have heard the strangest of bizarre things on arousal templates, right? Which would be like what I am attracted to and what I'm attracted by. What I do know is that at times, what appears like attraction is really just a way, and oftentimes the addicts aren't even aware of this, to say, this is why I can't get close to you. This one is a challenge. This one is your mom, someone that you're going to be around, someone that you are going to. So you're really going to have to understand what is your plan around this. And also with his therapist, figuring out what does this attraction actually mean? Is this attraction just a way for you to avoid feelings? Is this a way for you to stay in an avoidant place where you don't have to connect or get intimate with your wife? Is this a childhood reaction? Like, what is this? I think you having some understanding around where did this come from? What does this mean may help, but there's no way of changing that this does not go comfortable. This is very uncomfortable. And no, I wouldn't say this is normal. I haven't heard this a whole lot. But again, every sex addict story and arousal template is different. And I've heard, more things than I even knew were possible. So this would be a hard one. If you truly were interested in making it work and working through this, I would need to know more about where this came from. I would
Well,
need to know.
I kind of think that I was scrolling through and this one feels like it might be tied. So let's say it is. He did have childhood sexual abuse where his older sister was incestuous with him. And he admitted that he often confuses, I added this to the answer too, so you'll see it. And he admitted he was often confuses emotional closeness with women with sexual attraction. How can I feel safe that his recovery work is actually addressing this adequately enough to where he is a safe person to allow into my life and my family's lives? I feel like that one's tied to this. So
I think you're right. Okay. Well, that makes sense. Honestly, where my mind went was incest. Because what we notice with addicts that basically their affairs are or attraction is with those people that are most close and around them. Typically, there was some kind of incestuous, whether that be covert or overt incest in their families. So there's part of where it may have come from. That being said, yeah, he's going to have to do some serious work on what we would say is his arousal template. Now, you cannot change something that's a fetish for you. Those things stick with you for life, but him choosing your mother has some legs to it. Um, and I know that that feels incredibly personal, even though it doesn't have anything to do with you. I would say that you would feel safe by A, feeling like he can adequately talk about this. Um, and B, that there's a plan in place for what do you do when you're triggered by something like this? How does he respond because attraction does not mean you have to do anything with it. You do not have to drift into fantasy about that person. You do not have to take it to another. Attraction could just be, okay, I noticed that. And you're given the tools to move away from that going anywhere else. You need to understand that he can do that. We teach our addicts tools on how, like the 3-second rule is one of those, but fantasy is already a part of the addiction cycle. So we don't want them. We want to notice what is the trigger, right? And how can you effectively interrupt that cycle early on? So figuring out what is it that triggers me about whether it be your mom or someone else, and what do I do about it to stop that addiction cycle there, not moving into a fantasy phase, because that just takes it to a whole nother level. And then you have the risk of running into ritual, right? Which is now the behaviors that come out of fantasy. Now I'm moving toward acting on something. So I think you have to understand, along with his therapist, what's the plan here? How am I going to feel safe? What are the tools that are being taught to move away from this? Has he been able to, contaminate this, this relationship attraction to my mother? How, and also, you know, I think, yes, understanding a little bit more about how incest does play out later in the arousal template can be helpful in feeling it's not necessarily personal. There is traumatized to this. Um, but that's a tough one for sure. You're close to your mom, you're around your mom. That would be a really challenging one to overcome, but I believe you can. It's just education and a lot of really hard work for him.
And I want to go back to the first part where you said you had your full disclosure with your husband, revealed a lot of new information about other women, which was bad, but not necessarily surprising. And I'm going like I feel like there was traumatizing, like a good disclosure, is not all the gory details. And I'm concerned that you got too many gory details in all of this, because you said a lot of new information about other women. And it's more data, not all of this stuff, where especially where an addict can start going back into the fantasy about those things or reliving it. So I'm concerned about that for you, and my only thing is making sure that you have adequate support to help you process through this trauma for you, including the extra layer about your mom. So making sure that you have gotten that help, because that would be really important. Okay, all right, the next one I'm going to put in there. All right. Addict, this is it says addict sober 8 months. After months of sobriety, I had a day of acute craving for porn. I informed my wife, who was just glad I was communicating with her. At her suggestion, I reached out to an acquaintance in recovery as well. I did not act out, but I am troubled by how strong and sudden the urge was. Will a time come when such strong urges no longer come?
Yeah. So congratulations on 8 months,
Yeah.
first of all. I think what's important is that cravings, sometimes there's a biological piece to that, but for you, looking at what were you feeling? What were you feeling when that craving came on? Now, you may think nothing. I was having a great time. I was out with my partner. We were having a good time. You can have triggers that are positive and negative, but there might be something underneath that craving that if you're able to kind of dissect it and look at it a little bit closer, you may be able to kind of crack the code on that one not necessarily returning, or that if it does, you have the awareness over like, where did this come from? Not just spontaneously, like my system being like, whoa, So I would say start there. Absolutely. With time, cravings do go down. Um, and in 12-step programs, we talk about like the obsession being lifted. I'm grateful that at 8 months, you said out of nowhere, I had a craving. Some people are still craving a lot at 8 months. So I'm grateful that this is one that's really kind of coming up for you. But yes, these get lesser over time. And certainly if you can figure out what was maybe underneath it, it can help tremendously when you start to see that coming the next time.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've ever had, but I've had the dream where I woke up, I'm well, no, it's not a dream, it's a nightmare where I wake up and I thought I acted out, and I'm like, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh wait, it's just a dream. And you kind of go, what happened? What happened? And, and all of that stuff dissipates. But like I just want to go, well done. You are working a program. You told your wife, she was
Yeah.
grateful. This is a message to anybody who goes, oh, I'm not going to tell her, she'll be upset. No, she probably wasn't thrilled to hear it, but she was grateful you were telling her. You reached out to somebody. You did exactly what we do to make sure that we aren't having to say, oh, I had a relapse or a slip. So the tools are there, and it doesn't magically, there, I can't remember. It was one of the founding people, and I can't remember who it was. It was one of the early people in AA, and he had cravings always, like Erin was talking about. Some people have that consistently, and so that you don't, and that there was something that came up, but again, you remember this experience. The next time it happens, if it does, you have the tools to use, and you've just practiced doing it, in a way that has continued your recovery. So yay. Okay. D-Day, January of 2023. My husband hasn't acknowledged anything and acts like nothing is wrong. I'm doing an in-house separation, but he's in denial. So he wants to know why I don't invite him to family functions. Am I wrong for not inviting him? I feel guilty. Every day I deal with hate and rage. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you would feel angry when there's no acknowledgement. It's like it's difficult for your pain to move somewhere when you feel like it falls on deaf ears and like it's not that big of a deal. So I first want to acknowledge that. Um, and yes, in-home separation may move to out-of-home separation, especially if there's denial. You are not acknowledging, you are not getting into recovery. I don't want to live around this. I don't want to be around this where I feel heartbroken, which has turned into hate and rage and anger. Um, the piece about family functions, I mean, no, you don't have to invite them to anything. Okay. You don't have to invite them to anything. That being said, I would just ask the question of, is there anyone else, right? That is potential, like if it's a family function where your children are present, or a family function where, is there a way to include him that is not violating your own boundary? You shouldn't feel guilty for having boundaries, period. And truthfully, it is absolutely okay for you to say no, like, no, I don't want you there. Um, but that was the only piece I would say is if it's harming anybody else. Um, yeah, this sucks. It does, because there's no movement. Luckily for you, you can do your own work, and you can be fully empowered, and you can have your joy back, and you can deal with hate, and you can deal with rage, and you don't have to live in that every day. Because you have zero control over what he's going to do. You don't have control over a damn thing he's going to do. Whether he finally admits that he's got a problem, whether he, none of it. So boundaries and working on yourself, for sure. And no, you're not wrong for setting any boundaries. I think it's great that you're doing at least an in-home separation right now to protect yourself. Um, and yeah, family functions or not, don't feel guilty. You have a choice.
I one more time typed in the betrayed partner group that starts on. I mean, you've heard us both say healthy boundaries, healthy boundaries. They're for
Yeah.
your safety. They're not, and the guilt, like I know addicts are really good at making, other people feel guilty. It's manipulative. I will completely own that. Like, in my addiction, I wanted what I wanted. I didn't care about anybody else. And I would do whatever it took, including manipulating. So, and he wants to have the facade of like, oh, everything's fine. And I want to go, so the healthy boundaries for you, the in-house separation. I think that's fine. I really do. But I'm also going, sometimes people get stuck in that. So like it can be 3 years we've been separated in the house, and and nothing changes. So I would invite you, what is your plan? What are you looking for? And you could, if you're fine with staying in house separation, for the next 3 years, all good. But some people are going, that's not what I want. That's not, what. So what do you need to see one way or the other that will help you? Some people put a relationship in safe harbor while I watch to see if he's willing to do these things. And then, then there's the next phase. So I'm just wondering about that. But I think healthy boundaries for you, and really working with your qualified professional to help you shore up I've got nothing to feel guilty about, nothing I did or didn't do caused this. I think that will be helpful. So, okay, Erin, for betrayed partners, how do I cope with the type of people he acted out with? And to learn more about the addiction, why do they act out with the type of people they do? That's a great question. So
It is.
they're all great questions. Don't get me wrong. So yeah, but
Yeah. So this comes up a lot, because we will have men that come into treatment, right, that are acting out with, they're married to a woman saying, I'm heterosexual, acting out with men. We'll have a heterosexual man having sex with transgendered women. We had a gentleman, well, I'm not going to, that's too, I think, specific, but
yeah, please.
yeah, but we've had a number of different arousal template and fetish kind of behaviors. And the thing is, it has nothing to do with you. I think the biggest thing that partners often feel is, if I'm not that, then how am I good enough? If he's looking up, a certain type of woman and I look nothing like that thing, how is it that I'm attractive to him? And there's a lot of insecurity that can come up with that. But the truth is, this type of acting out is happening with zero intimacy, none. In other words, there's no trust. An arousal template stuff can come from a long time ago, and it's there. Now, that being said, what we are working towards in recovery is to build intimacy with sex and intimacy in general. And what comes with that is that I don't need a certain type of visual stimulation to be attracted, right? And many of our guys will say, I'm so attracted to my wife. I am. And yet in my acting out life, I'm doing all of these things. Sometimes that's a fantasy world. Sometimes it's a fetish. Sometimes it is literally something that they've been looking at since they were young. There's a myriad of reasons that we can look at that speak to the arousal template. But truthfully, when I say this, it is separate from the relational intimacy and attraction. So just because they're acting out with a certain type of person or thing, does not mean that is mutually exclusive from their ability to be connected and attracted to you. And it has nothing to do with you, which is hard to hear. But we see this a lot. And many of the men themselves are confused by why they're attracted to certain things. So helping them to kind of look at that as well.
Yeah, and Erin's right. This isn't about you, which feels dismissive, and it's not it, but it really is. So how do you cope? You understand that it isn't personal. It's in their brokenness. I used that word earlier, and I really do see that as in our brokenness as addicts, we do all kinds of things that are hurtful to ourselves and everyone else. And so, just understand there's a massive amount of brokenness, and there's opportunity for healing. And so the more you lean into betrayed partner resources, there's some really good podcasts on our website. It talks about, I mean, we've got everything from epigenetics, so more scientific, to, what is sex addiction? And Dr. Rob did a really good one on home and how, addicts are seeking home and what that means. I mean, so there's just lots of really good content that I think will help educate you and understanding, because it feels so personal, and it isn't, which is, that paradox.
Mm-hmm. And also, addicts are so compartmentalized. They may have this whole other duality on this other side that is interested in certain things, that is acting out and lying and hiding and doing the things that they're doing. And then they have their life in the day to day. And honestly, sometimes those things don't even think about the other. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been made real possible for them to continue this life over here. But I think that if you said, well, if you were to have this thing that you're attracted to, and that's your thing every single day, it'd be like, no, that works over here. And this secret private life this addiction that I've been carrying on and this compartmentalized self, I don't want that every day. That's not what I want to live with and have and be with. So it depends. It really depends. But Cammie's right. It's starting with not taking this personal, as difficult as that can be at times.
Yeah, and it feels so personal. So, lean into the resources that that are shared here. I think you'll find it really helpful. So, okay, here's one. I have my first session with a different CSAT on Wednesday and Thursday. So 2 different professionals. How many sessions would you recommend I see each CSAT before I decide which one I prefer?
I think, I mean, I am a huge proponent of, if you don't feel a connection in the first session, it's not the right person for you. And the reason why, we as therapists are kind of, the product, you're the consumer. I feel if you don't feel safe and you don't feel some level of connection in that first session, it's unlikely that you'll feel it in subsequent sessions. Now, that being said, that's not always the case, especially if the client doesn't feel safe with anybody and it takes them a while to get to know somebody. But I would say if you have good references on this person, in other words, they do good work, and then you just feel that connection. So I would say you're going to have a fairly decent read, especially if you're seeing 2 people, which one you feel most connected to on the first session. If you're starting with someone new, one person, I'd say you're going to have a pretty good read on that first session, but give it 2 or 3. And you want to ask them, what's your plan to help me? What is it that you typically do to help somebody work through this particular situation? Ask good questions and find out if that resonates with you, if that's something that you're interested in, or you feel like they have a handle on what it is that you're trying to achieve. So there's the connection piece, and then there's how good are they at their job. So I'd say good references, connection, and then what's the plan?
And I think it's more important to know what is the plan, because here's the thing. I get lots of, here's a typical scenario. A betrayed partner says, my husband's going to his therapist and he's been going for, let's say, 2 years, and nothing's really changing, but he really likes his therapist. And I'm going like, that feels like a therapist that isn't holding accountability. So to me, I want to know, like, if I'm going to a surgeon, I want to know they can do their job. Like, do I have to like them? It's nice if I like them, but I really have to know that they can do their job. So that connection is, to me, can they help me? Do I trust that they can help me, get out of the place I'm at, why I'm going in the first place? So, I'm not just going there to spend my time, yakking with a friend. I'll go to the coffee shop for that. So I'm looking for help in a specific area. So I think connection is important, but to me, it feels more like, do I connect with them and respect that they can help me? You respect their work. So just a little different slant. Okay, trickle discovery has occurred over several years, but only in the last 2 weeks have I put 2 and 2 together and realized that this is many elements of sex addiction. Thank you, Dr. Rob, for helping me understand the pattern. I am the betrayed. My partner is not yet in any kind of recovery. What might be a good first boundaries for me to set to make it clear that some kind of recovery process needs to occur?
Yeah, sorry. Trickle disclosure is so traumatizing. It's because it's every time you hear something, you have to kind of experience the trauma, heal from it. You begin to build trust, and then it's like you get hit by another bomb. So that in itself is really challenging. I think that some good first boundaries are, you have to decide, okay, what is it that's going to make me feel safe? So is it, I don't trust anything he says. So what actions on his part are going to make me feel safe? And what is my physical environment around me going to look like to make me feel safe? Do I feel safe sleeping in the same bed? Do I feel safe being in the same house? Do I feel safe if he's not in a recovery program, or he's not seeing a therapist, or he doesn't have a sponsor, or there's no filtering software on his? You want to avoid being his mother, right? We don't want to spend all our time being like a private investigator, but you do want to have certain actions, because actions are the only way to build trust again. Words are out the window completely. So it's what actions are taking place that make me feel safe. And I would say, like, a good place to start is you need to get into some kind of recovery. Um, if that's attending meetings, if that's having a sponsor, if that's seeing a therapist, I think that's a really good place to start. And then thinking about what's going to make me feel safe in my physical environment as well. What does it look like if he relapses again? What, having some of those plans in place. But I think right off the bat, you know, it's totally okay for you to set up some boundaries to say, if these actions are not happening, I struggle with feeling safe in this relationship moving forward.
And I typed in there, please email me. I've got a whole list of resources, including on our homepage on Seeking Integrity. There's a quick self-assessment, and if he takes that and counts how many yeses he has, so if somebody has a 5, that's different than if they have a 15 on the yeses, and the resources that would be applicable, so if he, like, every addict can lie and minimize, but if they're at a point where they're going, yeah, like, this is a problem in our relationship, I want to get help, that would be helpful for us to know. But I've got lots of options and ideas, but again, the healthy boundaries you will learn about in the work group if you're able to sign up for that. That starts on Wednesday. We'll offer it again probably in October. I don't have another date for it, but this is a unique opportunity because it starts on August 23rd. So okay. Next question, Erin. I cannot believe my SA husband when he says that his acting out was not about sex. However, he would spend 3 hours with multiple sex workers at a time and said it wasn't about the sex and he never orgasmed. When we are intimate, he does not last long, maybe 5 minutes. How can he spend hours with them, only minutes with me? I am so confused. I hear you.
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes, right? And here's the thing, saying it's not about the sex doesn't actually help you heal either. It's an explanation, I think, that he's hoping makes you feel better. Addiction is not always about the thing we're addicted to, right? There's like a whole underlying system that is under there. For some of our guys, validation is what it's about. I am seeking validation from woman after woman after woman because I have a bucket with holes in it as my self-esteem. But that's not the point. So I would say, I'm not sure whether or not he's telling you that he actually had sex for hours on end, because I would then question, like, what are you on? What are you on that you're lasting for that long? And also, when the two of you are intimate, what is the environment? What is the lead up to that? Is it what I would call just like a sexual experience where you're kind of like going straight into what would be just genitalia contact? Or is there foreplay? Are we actually spending time communicating with one another? Post disclosure, I mean, sex is hard. It's hard when there's not trust there. It's hard when there's shame there. It's hard to navigate, but you cannot compare yourself to anything going on in their addiction, because they're not going to be comparable. Again, I think that when he's saying it's not about the sex, he's understanding that it's about whatever. It's like, I'm seeking to feel something that I don't want to feel something that I can't feel, or I'm seeking to avoid something that I don't want to feel. I'm seeking to numb out. I mean, there's a lot of underlying kind of conditions with addiction that he might be referring to. But for sex addicts, sex is a part of it. So, saying it's not about sex at all when you're having sex is not really a great answer that's going to help you with that. But yeah, you can't compare yourself. Not to mention, he's saying right here that he never orgasmed. So what was actually happening there? Who knows? And you're saying that he orgasms within 5 minutes. So there's definitely a differential in the experience, period, at all. But I can see how it would be confusing when you're kind of comparing these two experiences. And I think I would need more information to fully understand what's going on here. But um, yeah, that's a tough one. But I would say focusing on how can I build our intimacy. I cannot change what he has done, and it sucks to even imagine having to kind of relive that in your mind. But what can I do to make our intimacy? What can we do to make our intimacy, if lasting longer is part of what you want, if wanting more communication, if wanting, you know, there to be elements of your sex life that you haven't had before. I would say working on building your intimacy and being proud of that and feeling good about that is the focus, because you may not get answers to the other piece of this, because addiction doesn't always have answers. Um, but that would be confusing, and that is tough.
Yeah, and this is some of the stuff that I go, I mean, I hate that you have it stuck in your head that he spent 3 hours with multiple sex workers, at a time.
The detail.
Yeah, it's like the gory details that you can't get unstuck. I get, so many calls and emails from partners who are going like, it's like extra traumatizing. So I'm so sorry, that you have that in your head, and now you're comparing, and I don't buy, a lot of that stuff anyway, but at some point, you getting help for you to work through that trauma and that, that extra stuff that's in your head, I really hope you've got good support, for that. So, okay, Erin, we always hear it takes 3 to 5 years for the addict's brain to heal. Why are we getting that told? Why are we getting that told?
Are
Too
we
many
in?
guys. Okay, I think so. Yeah. Too many guys in recovery for a year or two feel like they have conquered addiction. They float along for a little while and then they end up relapsing. Why not total honesty with a spouse and the addict? Also, why does it take the spouse longer, 8 to 10 years, to heal from betrayal trauma? What's the difference for the healing process? I've never heard some of like that, 8 to 10 years. I've never Okay, thoughts, Erin?
Yeah, I don't like time frames. You know, maybe there's some scientific evidence, right? And there is, around time frames it takes for the brain to structurally look similar to how it looked pre-addiction, right? Or building new neural pathways. But I don't think that that can be ascribed to anyone. It doesn't necessarily matter. And here's why. If you are working a program, if you are following the steps that are in your plan to recover, you can do it, whether or not your brain structurally looks different than it did before, because you are building new neural pathways. Every time you are building relationships with other addicts, you are becoming more vulnerable. You are learning to trust. You know what intimacy now feels like. Your brain is changing all the time. So I wouldn't. I mean, I think that if I, was brand new sober and it was like, well, it's going to take 3 to 5 years for your brain to heal. Not to saying that that might not be true, especially on like some scientific level, but that doesn't matter. Um, Everybody's road to recovery is very different. Some, like you heard, are going to experience cravings. Others might not at all. Some are going to relapse and others will not. But I think it's all about your program and following your plan and sticking to that no matter what. Your brain is going to heal with time. And I think that's going to be different for everybody, especially if you're dealing with potentially dual addictions, chemsex, for instance. Um, but don't hold that as law or as a guiding factor on whether I am well or not. Because I'll tell you, there's all kinds of statistics around the brain on, on stimulants, for instance. And I'm in recovery from stimulants. And my process looked nothing like anything that scientifically was out there. So I just think that it depends on the person. Now, 8 to 10 years from healing from betrayal trauma, why would anyone even embark on that journey? I mean, that's that's crazy. I mean, I just did a training more recently that talked about more like 18 months to 36 months. Again, it's about your relationship. Everybody's experience is completely different, how long you've been together, How long did the betrayal last? How long did you find out? Are they in recovery? Are they doing everything they need to do to heal? So throw out the time frames. Give yourself grace that it doesn't happen overnight, but engage in the next right thing for both of you, and follow the plan with good support around you and good recovery around you. I think both of those time frames are long, and they might even discourage hope for the future. I mean, the 8 to 10 years, especially, that's whack.
Yeah. So I was telling Erin earlier today, I had somebody that wrote, her husband went to Seeking Integrity, and she was commenting on, he was just back from treatment. She said, I can see it's awkward, but she said, I can see in his actions that he is different. He's making some movement forward. So she had hope already. And that's very early in the process. So I think it really is dependent on what the addict is doing. I think the clock keeps getting reset, when, somebody, continues to lie and minimize, and, like, then it's like, why would you begin to trust anything? But that's separate from healing. I mean, I know lots of partners who have gone, yep, what he does is what he's going to do. And I have my whole support network, and I'm taking care of me. And so I'm okay. So like, I would say they're far along on the healing journey, even if he's not, and so I think timeframes are helpful. I do know lots of people, I mean, I see this in my meetings all the time too, where people go, oh, I've been, in recovery for X amount of months, a year or two, whoo-hoo. And then I just shared this with somebody else earlier today. I was like, addiction is the only thing where we quit doing what worked for us. Oh, that was working really good, so I'm going to quit doing that. And then I relapsed, and I'm going, what happened? So, it's the crazy brain that we have. We can learn to heal if we just keep doing what we're supposed to do, one day at a time. It gets better, and you guys can. I did this for myself because there was a big sobriety birthday, and I had to go make amends, which was not my favorite thing to do. But I needed to, and I did. And I was like, why am I not like Miss Zen? And I thought, because I'm still like on the journey. And then I thought, I'm happy with where I am now compared to 2 years ago. And in 2 years, I know I'll be able to say the same thing. So I'm willing to remain on the journey. I'm perfectly human, but continuing that process and looking for the changes. I'm not going to magically arrive at 3 years, at 5 years, at 8 years, at 10 years. It's always going to be the journey. So the time frames are kind of useful just to hold the space, to know that, like, I'm 2 months in, and like, things are not, like, to expect things to be radically different in a short time is unrealistic. So understanding that there's, a process to all of this, but, no, I've never seen a flip of a switch and then poof, everything's all different. It's the daily work, and that makes things change. So there's always hope, but you got to do the work. So, okay, we are way, we're out of time, but we're way not going to get to the rest of the questions. So come back, please join us, get them in. We'll do our best to answer. And you can always email me, TAMI@seekingintegrity.com. There's some of you that really, like, I've got some resources for you. So email me, and I'll, give you links to all of that too. All right. Thanks, Erin. Really appreciate it.
Have
Bye.
a great night, everyone.